congratulations on the film. It's interesting how Sundance has almost established this tradition of throwing up a horror movie. Last year we had Get Out.
Yeah.
This year we've got Hereditary, which of course is your film. And it's been mentioned in the same breath as things like The Shining and The Exorcist. So I wondered how it felt for you as the writer and director to have your film mentioned in such illustrious company.
I mean, it's a thrill, you know. I mean, while you're making a film is such a difficult thing, and it takes so long, and it's so stressful that, you know, one often fantasizes about, you know, how it might be received, and you know, this has been a real surprise, but obviously a welcome one, and it's been really heartening to see the film be so enthusiastically received, especially because, you know, we always knew that the film was going to be alienating potentially, and you know, it's a film whose primary aim is to upset the audience in a pretty deep way, and so it's been again, it's been a surprise to see people embrace it so completely, but it's been very exciting.
So when you realised that not just the critics liked it, but the audiences liked it as well, how did you react?
The first reaction is one of relief. You know, it's just, okay, they don't hate it.
There's got to be some excitement
and then you can start to enjoy it a little bit later once you've just, you know, been able to collect yourself, because there's so much, you know, panic you know, attached to releasing a movie. And
I've described it as a horror. Is that actually how you would describe it?
I mean, it is a horror film, and I you know, in a lot of ways it's unabashedly a horror film. It's playing with tropes and conventions.
Is there any other way that you describe it?
Well,
does it sort of fit the horror mold, or is there more to it than that?
Well, I was going to say, you know, the way I was pitching the film when I was first trying to get it made was not as a horror film, but rather as a family tragedy that curdles into a nightmare, in the same way that life can feel like a nightmare when you know, things fall apart or disaster strikes, and so in that sense, you know, and I've said this before, but I do feel like the film owes just as great of a debt to the domestic melodrama as it does to the horror movie, in that it is a film about suffering, and it's a film about people who are, you know, in terrible pain, and they're suffering terrible loss, and it aims to honor those emotions by ultimately being as big as those emotions.
So do you think that's why the audiences have responded in the way that they have, because they actually buy into what the family is feeling at the time?
I imagine so. I can't really speak to. I mean, once you've made the film and you put it out, it belongs to the audience. It's no longer mine. But I imagine that people are feeling for these people, and that when the genre stuff kicks in, it comes as something of a betrayal. Because, you know, what happens to these people is not nice, you know, and the film does kind of kick into overdrive in the second half, but the first hour really takes its time, and we went through pains to really establish this family and their dynamic, and I hope that you feel a real history between these people. I know that I created one, and with the actors, and I mean, I know that I'm never affected by anything if I'm not invested in the people to whom these things are happening first, and so I imagine that people are responding to that.
You mentioned the first half of the film. The thing I noticed about that first half was that there was always a rational explanation for everything that happened, and it was only in the second half that those explanations sort of disappeared and it all started to spiral out of control. I mean, when you were writing the film, because you wrote as well as directing it, presumably that was a deliberate structure on your part.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, doing both jobs, what was that like? Did the two sort of merge into one, or how did you approach it?
With writing and directing?
Writing and directing, particularly as it's your first feature.
I see writing as being, you know, the first part of directing.
So you don't see any dividing line between the two?
No, I really don't. I start by, you know, creating an outline and a structure before I write anything, and so that I know what I'm writing. I've tried writing without an outline, and I end up writing 300-page scripts, right? So and then I write the film, and then I go ahead and I create a shot list for it, so that I which is really just a process of me playing the script through my head and finding what the movie looks like and what it is, and then I'll sit down with my production designer and my cinematographer. In this case, the production designer was Grace Yuan, and the DP was Pavel Pogorzelski, both wonderful artists, and I'll take them through the shot list, scene by scene, shot by shot, and that takes about 3 weeks, and then we all have the same movie in our head, and from there we talk about what is the best way to execute that, and we found that we had to build the set in order to accommodate that shot list, but also in order to accommodate the aesthetic that was emerging, which was, we wanted to pursue this dollhouse aesthetic, and for the film to feel increasingly uncanny, and for the home itself to begin as a home, although it's a fraught home, and for it to kind of become increasingly unhome-like. But I look at and then of course we build the set, and we're having those sets replicated in miniature form in another country, in Toronto, while we're building in Utah, and then we're on set and we're making the film and we're shooting it and we're executing it, which is, I think, the least creative part of the process, and it's the most stressful because just there's a clock hanging over you,
and the budget as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And then and that's all, and time is money, right? and then we move into post, and I don't see any stage of that as being separate from the directing.
And are there any specific directors that you feel have influenced you at all?
Oh, I mean, so many. I love movies, and I'm a huge cinephile, and one reason I'm making films is just because I love them so much that I want to have a dialogue with them. But I mean, a long list of people,
Such as?
Well, I mean, a lot of the usual suspects like Fellini and Bergman and early Scorsese, Kubrick, Polanski.
That's a pretty good list.
Yeah. Mike Leigh is one of my favorite filmmakers.
Really?
Yeah, Nicholas Roeg.
Yeah.
And then
have you drawn on any of those for Hereditary?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of Bergman in this. I screened Cries and Whispers and Autumn Sonata for a crew. There's a lot of Polanski. There's a lot of Nicholas Roeg. And
you didn't take the Mike Leigh approach with the dialogue or anything like that?
Well, no.
No.
I didn't have 6 months in a warehouse with my actors, building the characters
from scratch.
His approach
is unique, isn't it?
So, well, yeah. No, I don't think anybody can work the way he does.
No.
But I also feel that there are very few filmmakers who make films as vivid and beautifully realized as his films.
So the cast, I've got to say, all of them are absolutely amazing, particularly Toni Collette. I think everybody singled her out. She's quite extraordinary. How did you get her involved?
Well, I agree with you. I think she's amazing. I think everybody's amazing in this film. We sent her the script. I attached a letter to her, and she responded to it, and we met for lunch, and she loved the character and understood what was required, and she attached herself, and that's really what got the movie going. That's what got the train moving. So I'll always be grateful to her just for getting the movie, making the movie real. And then I'm doubly grateful for the performance that she turned in. She
is quite extraordinary. So what's next for you? I mean, do you see this as a stepping stone maybe to Hollywood? Perhaps they've come knocking already?
I have a lot of screenplays that I've written and a lot of films that I want to make, and I'm already in pre-production on my second film, and
tell us some more about that.
It's a horror film, and I'm shooting it in Europe. It's probably the last horror film that I'll do for a long time. I love the genre, but I also just love genre in general, and I really want to
Does it have a name?
I don't want to repeat myself. It's called Midsommar. I hope to keep doing my own stuff for as long as I can, and I see the goal of every film as just being able to make the next one.
So when can we expect to see your next one, do you think?
Probably next year.
We'll look forward to it.
Thank you so
Ari,
much.
thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.